Okay, so today we're going to go over the topics that we would have covered in class. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to do it in English mostly because we don't have that face-to-face interaction. But please know that you are free to contact me to go over these things if we need to. D'accord. But I will be speaking French for some parts of it. And I would encourage you to have your book out when you're looking at this so that when I'm talking about à la page 30, okay, you can look at that page and really sort of interact with that as much as possible. D'accord. Nous avons une leçon ici. Les choses à boire, ok? Donc la question c'est quelque chose à boire. So maybe try and repeat after me. Quelque chose à boire? Nous sommes à la page 30. Okay? So we have different things that you might want to order to drink. Okay? So try and repeat after me here. Le café, le coca, le vin, le thé. So those things are some things that we might, order in a cafe, right? Some other phrases, and this is sort of part of your book where we're introducing this vocabulary here, okay? And as you see here, we can use the phrase est-ce que at the start of a sentence to make it a question. So we can just sort of slap that onto the front of a sentence to make it into a question here. And we learned about the verb aimer, or to like, okay? That's an ER verb, so it's conjugated just like all of those other ones that we learned the other day. So here, if we just look at here, vous aimez, okay? So that's just the verb aimer conjugated, that ER verb conjugated for the subject pronoun vous. And then we can slap on this phrase on the front of it to make it into a yes or no question. And in English, that comes out to be, do you like? Do you like? Okay? So, répétez après moi. Est-ce que? Est-ce que? Est-ce que vous aimez? Est-ce que vous aimez? And then, so what are some responses that we might have to that question? Okay? Maybe here, j'aime le coca. J'aime le coca. And so we could insert anything here if we wanted to go back and look at, maybe le café. We could add any of these things here. J'aime le café. If we really want to say it, I like it a lot, we could say j'aime beaucoup. J'aime beaucoup. And here they're using le thé. J'aime beaucoup le thé. Now here, if we know what the verb aimer means, to like, and we're looking at this, and we know that when we have a negative, we take ne and pas, and we put it around the verb, gives it a hug to make it negative, okay? So what might this mean? J'aime le coca is an affirmative statement, but je n'aime pas would be a negative statement, so I do not like. Je n'aime pas. So, répétez après moi. Je n'aime pas. And we can insert anything here again, just like that. We could say, je n'aime pas le coca, je n'aime pas le thé, okay? I think from our previous discussion, Karine, when she was talking to James Davidson, she said she didn't like le coca. She said, je n'aime pas le coca, okay? Maybe a question that you might want to ask at a cafe is, voulez-vous boire quelque chose? Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again, and I'm going to break it down into different parts, okay? And this is something here, it's just vocabulary, learning it for pronunciation. We don't really know how to conjugate this verb, Vouloir, we don't really know how to conjugate that verb yet. One thing that we can learn from this, though, is this phrase here, quelque chose, something. Quelque chose. But otherwise, we're just taking this as a chunk that we're learning, okay? So I'm going to start off with the first part here. Voulez-vous? Voulez-vous? And then we would say, voulez-vous boire? And some of you asked in your composition workshops about something similar to this. And it's a little bit different here because we have this inverted because it's a question, but we have one verb conjugated and the second verb is always in the infinitive, okay? So those of you that asked about that, maybe you can see some similarities here, okay? So, voulez-vous boire? Voulez-vous boire? Voulez-vous boire quelque chose? So what would be some possible response? Well, of course you could use these sentences up here, but what if you didn't want anything to drink? So you might say non, merci. Non, merci. You might also say, if you would like something to drink, oui, okay? Oui, je veux bien. And again, this is the same verb here. We're just going to learn it as a chunk, as a what we call a functional chunk that you're just going to learn in order to be able to communicate with that phrase. And as you progress in your French studies, you'll learn how that verb actually is conjugated. It's very irregular. But right now, we're just going to learn this as a chunk. So try and repeat after me. Répétez après moi. Oui, je veux bien. Oui, je veux bien. And so this is another form here. You could also say this form. It's the same verb again. We're learning this as a piece of vocabulary that helps us to communicate, but you will learn how to conjugate this later. So right now, it's just a vocabulary word. We'll learn how to conjugate that later. So we can, in order to say I would like or I'd like, we would say je voudrais. So répétez après moi, je voudrais. Je voudrais. And so here we might say a number of things, okay? If we're talking about we want a cup of coffee, we would say une tasse de café. Une tasse de café. Same thing for tea, makes sense, right? Une tasse de thé. Une tasse de thé. Now, if we're talking about Coke or wine, then we're going to want to say a glass instead of a cup, okay? So we're going to change our words here a little bit. We're going to say un verre de coca, un verre de coca, un verre de vin, un verre de vin. And, you know, we could switch these out as is logical with a cup or a glass, obviously. And it would be very helpful, okay, if you practiced with a partner these questions right here, okay? So maybe changing roles, even over the telephone, just say, voulez-vous boire quelque chose? And then answering with one of these phrases, or qu'est-ce que vous voulez? I'm going to repeat that again. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez? Or even if you feel like you would like to practice that with me over Skype or in a Wimba session, that's absolutely fine. I will be more than happy to do so. So if we look here, one preview of the lessons that we're going to learn is that when we have a quantity, a qualifier of quantity, so a cup of, a glass of, we're always going to use this de, like this, or maybe D apostrophe, but it'll always be that. So that's a preview of some stuff we're going to learn coming up. Now, as you can see here, I've opened up our ebook to page 46, and this is the definite article. So, when we are talking in French, most of our nouns will always have an article before them, unless we have a number or what we call a possessive, like my or your, his, her. So, for example, if I'm talking about books, and I want to say it is the book, I'm going to need a word that says the, okay? And a lot of times in English, in some contexts, we can drop those. We can drop that the. We can drop these articles that we're going to talk about. But in French, they always have to be there unless you have something like a number, like I said. So, for example, I wouldn't say it is the 6 books. I would choose one or the other, the or 6, right? It is my the books. I would choose one or the other, right? And so we need to pay attention to that. But in any other case, we're going to either use what we're going to talk about right now, the definite article, l'article défini, or the indefinite article, which we'll discuss in just a moment. Okay? So if we look at this page, we can see that every noun in French has a gender, right? And we remember that from our classes. Table is la table. It's feminine, right? But computer is l'ordinateur, is masculine, or desk is le bureau, is masculine. And that's pretty much random for our purposes right now. So you need to just remember them with their genders. So if we want to say the, and that's what we're getting at here. If we want to say the, this is a specific way to talk about something. Okay? We're going to use the definite article, and that makes sense. It's definite article. It's very specific. So we have to make it match up with the gender and the number of the noun. So if your noun is masculine and singular, you're going to use le. Le thé. Because if you want to say the tea, okay, then that is masculine and singular, so we're going to use le. Now, if your noun is feminine and singular, then you're going to use la. So, for example, la bière. La bière. Now, we can see here that we have these things right here, L apostrophe, and you can see some examples over here, L apostrophe. And what that is it's the same article, it's just that when it comes before a noun, a word that has a vowel starting off with it, then we're going to make that contraction. And you've seen that somewhat with some of our verbs, like the J apostrophe. Okay, it's the same thing. It's just that, for example, here, l'eau, water, well, we would have LA like this, and then we would have EAU, but then we would have A and E up next against each other, and that's two vowels, and that won't work. So we're just going to say L apostrophe. Now, that's not a problem for the plural because you have the S. So that takes us into the plural here, okay? Before all plural nouns, masculine or feminine, so it doesn't matter what the gender is, we're going to use the article les. Les boissons. And here, this is a typo in the book. There should be an S here because this is plural. And remember, this is when you're talking about something specific and you don't have a possessive or a number in front of it. Now, if you're just talking about something general, like a book, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But this is for something where you would use the word the. This really translates into the word the. And so here, this goes into the L apostrophe that we go through. And remember that a lot of times the letter H in French acts like a vowel sound because it's silent. Okay, so we can look over this. This is also a great point to use it in front of nouns that have generic meaning, okay? And this is where we would drop it, where we would drop that word the, right? So, for example, elle regarde souvent la télé. In English, we wouldn't say she often watches the television. We could, but we probably wouldn't, right? But in French, we have to have that la télé. Okay? D'accord. So I would encourage you to go through here and really work on these. You can complete them, as you can see right here as I mouse over them. You can try and complete them online. Or once again, if you want to set up a Wimba session with me or a Skype session with me, I can work with them with you online. On a Wimba session, if you find a time that a classmate can also do it, then we could sort of do some group work activity as well. So we could simulate what we do in class, and so that might be helpful for you. All right, so that's our definite articles. So the ones that we say, okay, les articles définis, meaning we're going to speak about something definitely, we're going to use the word the, okay? And as you can see here on our syllabus, we're also going to talk about, we're going to jump ahead a little bit because we are awesome. And we are going to talk about les articles indéfinis. Les articles indéfinis. So let's go to page 65. And this is really the same sort of thing, except it is exactly what it looks like. If we look at this phrase, l'article indéfini, and we compare it to what we just looked at, l'article défini, okay? So now we're not quite as specific as we were before. So our indefinite articles are un, une, and des. Un, une, des. And we use these as the equivalent for a or an, okay, in English. Now, the plural is day, and we can talk about that as meaning some in English. But that might change once we learn about the partitive articles, so watch out for that. But here we're just talking about a, an, or some. So if you compare them with what we just talked about with the article défini, which means the, le, la, les, meaning the. So really what it depends on is what you're trying to express. Which one you use depends on what you're trying to express. Now, if you have a number or something like that, once again, if you have a number or something like that in front of your noun, then you may not need one of these. Think about what it would say in English. That is where literal translation can come in very handy. Okay? You wouldn't say, that is a dog. We would just say, that's my dog, or that's a dog, one or the other, right? And that's a good example of that. So here, what we're trying to talk about is when you want to say a or an, or some. And once again, we really have to include these in French unless we have a number or things like that. So here they're talking about des corresponds to the English some or any. These words are often omitted in English, but it cannot be omitted in French. So, par exemple, j'ai des amis à Paris. And in English, we could say I have friends in Paris, or I have some friends in Paris. But in French, we have to have that article. Now, if I had a number there, I wouldn't need that. That would be like saying I have some two friends. So I have to choose one or the other. I want to say I have some friends or I have two friends. But so if you literally translate that out, then it will help you a lot there. Okay? So as we look at this, okay, we can see that for masculine singular nouns like un frère, un train, un orangina, okay, then the form is un. And that literally sounds like someone's punched you in the gut. Un. If you have a feminine singular noun like une sœur, une table, une limonade, then you have une. Feminine singular would be une. So masculine singular, feminine singular. And here when they're talking about the liaison, that's just when you're usually it does sound like you're being punched in the gut. Right? When it comes before a vowel, we can help that move through linguistically by saying un étudiant. We can move that in through. So that's something to practice here, okay? And then the plural form is des. So it doesn't matter if it's feminine or masculine here, okay? Un frère, des frères. Une sœur, des sœurs. And one other important thing to note here is that you have to repeat the article. Like if you're listing things in a sentence, you need to repeat each article before the noun. So, un homme et une femme, une mère et des enfants. We have to keep repeating that article because it's such an important part of the language. So again, here we have some exercises. Once again, if you would like to go over these with me over a Skype or a Wimba session, I would be more than happy to do so. Or you can come into my office and meet with me, and I'll be more than happy to go through these with you guys. I apologize that session got rescheduled during our class, but this is a big conference that VSU does host, so we have to be hospitable to all of the other universities that are coming in. So if you have any questions, please either Skype me, email me, or come by my office. Like I said, although I am going to this during our class time, I do have a lot of other availability. So please let me know if you have any questions. Remember that we do have a quiz coming up, okay? Your oral exam is still due, and your composition was due on Tuesday at midnight. If you haven't submitted that, you might want to email me and ask me a question about that, okay? So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions.